Hey everybody! I am here this week to read you your reading story. This is one of my favorite stories. It's probably the favorite story that we do all year long. So if you remember, the title of our story is The Christmas Mystery at Kaiser Primary. And the authors of this story are your teachers here at school. And the best part is who's the illustrator? It's you. Yeah, you get to be the illustrator of this story. So let's read. Once upon a time, there was a third grade class at a little school in West Virginia. The school was named Kaiser Primary School, and the teacher was Mrs. Maybury. This class was full of excitement for Christmas and their upcoming holiday break. They had a cheerful classroom that they worked hard to decorate, and one of their favorite parts was the Christmas tree full of ornaments they had all created by hand. It took them a long time to make the perfect tree, and this is why they loved it so much. The tree was not very large, but it was special to the students. It had ornaments they had designed and paper ornaments they had decorated themselves. It was a special tree just because they created it here in the classroom. No store-bought ornaments for this class. The students loved to show it off to anyone who visited their classroom. Even Miss Lisa, the principal, loved their tree. She told them it was the cutest third grade tree she had ever seen. "I'm going to take a picture of this adorable tree and put it in the yearbook," she said. The third graders were quite thrilled with this idea. Their little tree was going to be famous. One morning, the bell rang and the students walked into the classroom. The first thing they noticed was that their tree was gone. "Mrs. Maybury, where is our tree?" cried Leanna. Mrs. Maybury looked up from her desk and said, "Why, I don't know. I thought maybe one of you children had taken it to show Mr. West." With the help of Austin and Cash, they began to search the classroom. They looked high and they looked low, but there was no tree to be found. When Annabella and Aja came in, they helped join in the search as well. However, they had no luck. The tree was nowhere to be found. The students were distraught that their tree had gone missing. They asked each of the teachers if they had seen it, but everyone said no. They even asked Miss Stark, the janitor, to help in the search. But no matter where they looked, that tree just could not be found. There were lots of ideas as to what could have happened. "Maybe aliens abducted it," mused Molly. "No way, that's just crazy. I think someone broke in and stole it," exclaimed Paxton. "Maybe it was an elf on the shelf that took it," shouted Harper. Now, class, I'm sure this is all just a big misunderstanding. After all, no one at our school would be mean enough to steal a tree from kids. Our tree will turn up and everything will be okay." Mrs. Maybury tried her best to calm her students. But the students weren't convinced. They decided to keep looking around for clues and hints that might tell them where their tree went. Little did they know, a big hint would be waiting for them after computer lab that day. When they got back to class, Michaela spotted a note on her desk. "What does it say?" Lucius yelled. Jeremiah handed the note to Mrs. Maybury to read aloud. "Thanks for letting us borrow your tree, third grade. We are enjoying it tremendously. We will try our best to get it back to you before school is out." The whole class said, "Who is it from?" But the mysterious letter was not signed. Who could have sent such a thing? The class was abuzz with discussion about who could have borrowed their tree. Abigail thought that maybe kindergarten had borrowed it and written the nice letter. Owen and Nikolai didn't agree though, and Sierra and Lucy still thought aliens had abducted it. When the school day was over, Mrs. Maybury sent her students home with instructions to ask their parents if any of them had borrowed the tree. But when everyone returned the next day, the students said none of their parents was the culprit. However, what they did find that morning was a beautiful iced gingerbread cookie on each desk. "I wonder where these cookies came from," asked Bryson. "I don't know, but they are delicious," mumbled Carlos around a mouthful of cookie. Katrina and Colin nodded in agreement. It was certainly a mystery that Mrs. Maybury and her class could not figure out. Who took the tree? Why did they leave yummy cookies on the desk? On the third day that their tree was missing, the students were starting to get discouraged that their special tree might never return. This made them sad because they had worked so hard on it. Mrs. Maybury could tell the children were upset and she tried to cheer them up, but the only thing that would make them feel better was the return of their tree. But someone must have been keeping a close eye on the class because while they were at lunch that day, someone snuck into the classroom and wrote in red and green glitter on the chalkboard, "Don't be sad, our third grade friends. Your tree is being greatly admired and will return to you soon. Thanks for sharing." The students were so excited to have another secret note. This note was not signed either, but they knew it must be from someone magical. After all, who else would write a note in red and green glitter? "Maybe the elf idea wasn't so bad after all," said Ashton. "Yeah, elves are sneaky and they like to write in red and green," Isaiah added. The class thought he had a good point. "Elves wear red and green clothes," shouted Austin. Skylar nodded along with the class. Finally, it was almost the end of the last day of school before Christmas break. Mrs. Maybury and her students were getting antsy. They wanted their tree back and they wanted to know who borrowed it. Just after lunch, they heard a tap, tap, tap on the door that led outside. She walked over, opened the door, and gasped. The rest of the class was speechless. They couldn't believe their eyes. Standing outside the door was a giant reindeer with a bright red nose, and held in his teeth was the missing tree. Mrs. Maybury reached out and took the tree in her hands. The reindeer looked over his shoulder and a tiny elf popped up. In a high, squeaky voice, the elf said, "Thank you so much for letting us borrow your tree. Rudolph here knocked over the one at the North Pole, and yours was so beautiful we couldn't resist borrowing it. I'm sorry if we upset you, but here it is, back safe and sound. Santa said to tell you that everyone will be on the nice list and to have a very Merry Christmas." And with a flash, the elf and Rudolph were gone. Mrs. Maybury turned around and looked at her class. Everyone was in shock, but they were so happy to have helped Santa when he needed them. And best of all, their wonderful tree was home. Isn't that a good story? So our skill this week is talking about illustrations, and we're going to talk a whole lot about it tomorrow. But if you would like to go ahead and get started on illustrating your story today, you can. You'll notice that each page has a lot of blank white space, and that's the place for you to draw. So a couple of things to keep in mind as you work on your illustrations is you want to make sure that your picture matches the words in your story. Okay, so whatever it says on the page is what you want your picture to be of. And then think about when you're reading stories and you're looking at the pictures. Don't you like it when they're bright and colorful? Yes, you want to make sure that you use lots of colors to make your illustrations. Enjoy!